Hi all. So guys, let me know if you have any questions for now, like based on whatever we covered till now. Guys,
New path, not from my side yet.
anyone else, guys? Let me set up my environment, guys. Just give me a moment. Confirm me, guys, once you can see the screen. Can you see my screen, guys? So what is the database? Database is nothing but a engine to host data files or facilitate to store the data in tabular format, RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Okay. We have some other databases also, MongoDB and MySQL and all. Like we can store your some unstructured data also in the MongoDB. But here we will be talking about RDBMS because in majority of the applications we will be dealing with RDBMS only. And what are the major database we have? We will be using MS SQL, Oracle database. So what is the difference? What is the difference between these two? We have other as well, like right, my SQL DB, and we have MongoDB. But what is the difference between these all these different databases? See, all the different databases except MongoDB. MongoDB having some additional features of like storing unstructured data or the files, but the rest are the RDBMS, Relational Database Management Systems. So I can do what I can do is these are the RDBMS, Relational Database Management Systems, and what actually the difference between these all different databases. Only the provider is different. Okay, MySQL is like open source and Oracle is by Oracle and MS SQL is by MS SQL DB is by the Microsoft. So that only the provider is different, and the end of the story, the whatever the work we are supposed to do and what we are going to do is always same in terms of the database. Okay. So let us take the example of any database, irrespective of whether it is an Oracle or MS SQL. So database will have so it stores the tabular data. Okay, which is nothing but rows and columns. So however we are dealing with the Excel files, right? Like in a sheet, it's rows and columns in a similar way, we will be having this tabular format of data. So when do we use database or an Excel? Or in workbook? So the same thing we can achieve through the workbook as well, but then why we want to go with the database? See, the advantage of the database is access the data across the network. Organizational network. So you can access your data inside your organization network, and it is not dependent on like to store in some location and sharing the location, or like again we need to uh, perform the options of sharing and putting it in some shared drive and maintaining. See, Excel, it is hard, right? Like we will be having like that needs to be stored in some location and all, but this will be sitting on your server and it can be accessed across your organizational network. Can handle large amount of data. Whereas workbook is limited to 1 million records. You have seen, right? 10 lakhs, 48,000 some data is there. So that is the limitation for the Excel workbook. And whereas with the database, we don't have any limitation. We can have any number of data. Operations on top of DB is faster than workbook. Because when you open your Excel application with such a data, right, it will take a lot of time in order to interact with your Excel and read the data. And even as a human also, if you try to open the data file, then it will take a lot of time. So for that reason, the database is much more faster compared to the workbook. Okay. So what operations can be performed on DB. So what are the different operations we can perform? So to keep the things in mind and easy understanding, right? For the database, we generally call it as CRUD, which means create, read, update, and delete. So these are the core operations. Generally, we need to perform on any data, right? Like when we are dealing with data, creation of the data or reading of the data or updation of the data or deleting some data. So these are the major operations which we generally perform on top of any data. So the same operations we will be performing on top of the database as well. So that we simply remember it as CRUD, which means create, read, update, and delete. Okay. And what language we will use to deal with DB? SQL, which is nothing but structured query language, which means you are trying to query your database. Okay. And for that, like we have a structured query language with which we can interact with the database. And see, we will be calling it as like MS SQL, ELSQL. We can have any number of the SQL languages like NoSQL, MySQL. So you can have any languages, but the syntax are almost same with minor differences. Even those differences are like only with the keywords, not with the syntax. And if you know one SQL language, then it's easy to work with other as well. Yeah. Do we need to learn SQL also for UiPath implementations? We need to learn the basic queries, such as reading, creation, updation, and deletion operations. So you might be wondering, we said like these are the operations which we can perform, and we are saying that like we need to know syntaxes for this. See, not only those operations, we have a lot of things in database. Like we have in database, you have joins, stored procedures, uh, unions. We have a lot of things in that, but all these are not required. What we need to know is basic queries for reading, creating, updating, and deleting. That's it. And other functions, whatever we have, that will we will do based on our requirement. And we can openly say that like we didn't work with the functions or the stored procedures or unions or the joins. So we can even extend our knowledge to the joins as well, because the joins are like much more easier compared to the other. Stored procedures are nothing but predefined, sorry, user defined functions, you can say group of queries, which will perform some set of tasks, and with the functions are defined by the user. Those we generally call it as stored procedures. Stored procedures, I don't think like it is necessary for an RPA developer to learn. It is not a mandatory thing, but just think of this queries for reading, creating, updating, and deleting. So when you're dealing with a database, what are the different steps we generally follow? Connect to the database, perform operations, whatever it might be, disconnect from database. So these are the three things which we need to keep in our mind. Like we will be connecting to the database and then we can perform the operations on top of our database. And then we will need to disconnect from our database. So now each step has its own importance, right? So why do you need to disconnect? Is there any reason to disconnect? So we already connected and we performed the tasks. And why to bother of disconnection? Because my task was done. Connection will be still open and there may be a problem when we try to reconnect to the database. And keeping the connection open may create security issues on the data. Satish, even the Snowflake is also a similar kind of thing, but it will be sitting on top of the cloud, and you will be doing your uh, um, uh, analytics on top of it, right? Even on top of DB also we can do that. Yeah, even the cloud DB we have like for Azure and AWS, right? So we can do that. Okay. So this we should not keep the connection open. Now connecting to the database. What are the different ways we can connect to the database? See, when you are dealing with the Oracle or a MySQL or any other databases, right? The connection we will be doing with the local user, not with the Active Directory user. The Active Directory user is nothing but with the user which you are logging onto your machine. So let me put this. Active Directory user is nothing but the username you will be using to log into your organization machine. That we call it as Active Directory user. Okay? And now for MS SQL, let us discuss about the MS SQL connection, how we can do. MS SQL is, you know, provided by the Microsoft. So we will have the native integration or native connection with each and every applications we have in the Windows, which is released by the Microsoft, and even with the UiPath as well, because both are on top of .NET Framework. Now, we have two methods of authentication. One is Windows authentication, and other is local user authentication. Which means when you are saying the Windows authentication, the login will be with the logged in user onto your machine. So when you log in with your machine, okay, then it will be automatically logged in with your Windows credentials, like by logging into your machine itself. What you need to have is you need to have the access of this, whatever the Windows user you are using to log into your machine, have the read or write or whatever the required permissions on top of a database. And local user is like you need to provide the username and password in order to connect to your MS SQL database. When it comes to the Oracle or any other different databases, so I worked with only MS SQL and the Oracle database, so I didn't work with the others. But the thing is, so the thing here is, for Oracle, we cannot directly connect. For that, we need to configure in ODBC before we connect to DB. So here it will be always database user, which means the local user authentication. We have series of steps here to connect to the Oracle DB. We will write those steps latest is because it is a bit different compared to the MS SQL, but we will be dealing more with the MS SQL only. But when you are dealing with the financial applications and the financial data, then you are supposed to deal with the Oracle DB. Okay. Let me see if I can show you this because I don't have the Oracle DB installed and to perform the operations on top of DB, which means read the data. So let us not write in this way. Execute query, execute non-query. And we can even execute stored procedure also. Okay, so we can even perform these three also. And why I'm saying like reading or not writing or updating anything, why I'm saying that like execute query and execute non-query. And most frequently asked interview question. Not most frequently, in each and every interview, the question will be there. Difference between execute query with non-query. So we discussed about the CRUD operations, right? So when you say query means query your database, which means read your database, which means read operation. Non-query, which means other than the read operation. And can't we do anything other than the read operation in execute query? We can perform other operations also, but not recommended. And when you say we execute non-query, you cannot perform the read operations. The reason is the output of this data table, which means tabular data, which whatever the data we have inside of our database. Okay. But the output of this number of records affected, which means like by performing this query or executing this command, what are the how many records got impacted irrespective what data you have. So this is the difference between these two. So we need to talk about the output and also the capabilities of that, what it can do. Okay. And let us see the some basic queries. Basic keywords you can say.
But I think through basically that SQL connection or database, basically we can operate on the Excel as well, right? Let's say if we have a large amount of data available in the Excel, right? That we
Hmm.
can operate through the SQL as well, right?
Yes, you can do that. But the problem with the Excel is like you cannot have more than 1 million, right? The data.
Hmm.
But here you don't have any limitation. You can have any number.
Okay.
So basic keywords and queries like what we need to want to perform. See for read, the keyword is select. For create, we have create and insert. For update, we have update. Delete, we have delete and drop. So generally people will not ask, but these are required for you to know. Okay. When you are saying read, you want to read the data from your table, right? So let's start from table name. Just need to give the table name, select start from table name. This will be your query to read the data. So what is the difference between create and insert? Create is to create the table and insert is to insert data into the table. Okay. So this is to update your data, record data in the table. Update. Set column name equal to some value. I forgot again. I'm not using since a long time, right? Yeah. Where condition. So based on some conditional data condition, it will update your column values. So in the sense like you can have the condition also similar to in this way. One equal to some value. So based on this condition, other column values can be updated in a table. So we will see all this like by executing in UiPath Studio. No worries. And here delete, drop, and truncate. Delete records. Records in the sense like we are talking about the rows. When we say records, it is the rows. Drop table or database. So either to delete your database or a table. Truncate, so truncate is also similar. But the thing is, truncate will go for permanent delete and you cannot recover. But the drop, you can recover it. It is always recommended that you should not use recommendation. Should never use truncate at any point of time. Even it was not even suggested to the admins. So as a dev, we should not do it. Okay. So for query for deletion is deleting the data from table is delete from table name where condition. So based on some conditional conditions, we will be deleting it. So which means like in the similar way, like column value with if something is equal, then we want to delete those rows. So for that, we will be using this syntax and insert into. So for now, like forget about the drop and truncate and the create because those generally we do manually or the admin or architect will already defines that particular table and you are supposed to work on it. So when you are working on the tables, then our major agenda is like towards the select, insert, update, and delete. We will be doing only the majority of the cases we will be doing only these four operations. We will not be doing any other operation when we are dealing with of our processes because the other things will be taken care by the architect or the admin. Insert into table name. So here we need to write the column names. We need to provide the values. Whatever the order we are providing, we need to provide in the same order. Let us suppose you got call 4 and call 3. Then your values will be val 4, val 3. So we just need to define in the same order, like in the columns and the values, so that like the values will be allocated to that particular columns. Okay. Confirm. Yeah, perfect. And in case if you are providing all the values, not the specific values, we see here by giving this, right? Even though if you have 10 columns also, you can give values to 2 or 3 columns in between and in a different order also. Let us suppose if you want to provide all the values and in proper order, how your table columns are defined, then you can use insert into table name and directly you can provide the values. But what I suggest is always follow this syntax, not this one. So are we clear so far, guys? regarding the database?
Yes, Path. Path, remember I asked one question to you, right? Let's say we have a 10,000 record, right? So and now in the Excel sheet, right now, basically, which is now updated randomly, right, with some values. So how to find those updated row? I think we can find that through the SQL query as well here, right? Path?
Hmm. Yeah, I got you, but the random things is like we need to think of like in a different direction, guys. Like, see, what is the last updated, right? You want to see. So you already have the data, and some data is randomly got updated, right? And you need to find out what are the latest updated data, right? Not the older data.
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah, lost modified, you can get it from the SQL, I guess. But in Excel, even that question, see, I should not like I forgot that, but I should not might have left it because that such a questions are getting like in the interviews. Recent days I have seen it. So let us have that discussion probably um Friday. Just keep
Okay.
that as a reminder to me.
Sure, sure.
And Friday we can have that and we'll try to resolve it. Okay. Oh, we have the tables. Okay. So we'll break for 10 minutes and then we'll continue from the 11. Like we'll jump into the UiPath Studio and the database screen also, and then we will cover it up. Okay, guys.
Yeah, sure, Path. Yeah.
Record pausing is not available, I guess. Okay. Hi, Akash.
Yeah, Path.
How you and Satish left the class. So, is there any problem with my voice or something?
No, no, everything's fine. I think
Satish, you there?
Satish has some work, I think, I guess, yeah.
Okay. And Akash, if you don't mind, right, like you are the only one who is there in the call. So we covered with the this theoretical, right? Can we continue the practical tomorrow? Because the database is bit kind of non-available to people, right?
Correct, correct. No problem, no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, we can continue tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just share that previous recording, okay? I think you didn't share the recording as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I was saying, right? Like